Doug MPA back with another video. I found this one in the Harvard Business Review in the gender section, because that's where you would find this kind of article. It says research, how bias against women persists in female-dominated workplaces. Because guys, even when there's nothing but women in a workplace in a female-dominated industry, it's still your fault. Biases persist. Conflicts happen because it's all men's fault. But before we get into this article, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate it. It shows you support me and what I'm doing over here. Let's get into this, shall we? It says, it's been thought that once industries achieve gender balance, bias will decrease and gender gaps will close. Sometimes called the add women and stir approach, people tend to think that having more women present is all that's needed to promote change. No, women think that having more women present will promote change, not men. Men, we know that competent people, it doesn't matter your race, it doesn't matter your gender, but competent people will promote change in a workplace, not just someone based upon their gender, race, background, whatever. But simply adding women into a workplace does not change are you guys ready for it? Organizational structures and systems that benefit men more than women. There it is. Our new research shows gender bias is still prevalent in gender balance in female-dominated industries. Most gender bias research has focused on male-dominated industries like STEM or law enforcement, where women's experience of bias and discrimination may be more apparent. And then that's like one of the sexy things to talk about in our current day and age is what women have to go through in male-dominated spaces. You see these articles and these videos, what to do if you're a woman in a male-dominated space. Our research is unique in that it examines gender bias in 4 industries with more female than male workers: law, higher education, faith-based nonprofits, and healthcare. In these 4 industries, women dominate. They make up 53.5% of workforce in law, because I think it's 50-50 lawyers when it comes to males and females, and most paralegals are women. 55.3% in higher education. That's because most educational admin are women, and then college professors are 50% women. 63.8% in faith-based nonprofits. I don't know anything about that sector at all. And then 77.6% in healthcare. I know that 52% of doctors are women, and then nurses and CNAs and all this are all women. Using the gender bias scale for women leaders, what is that? We're going to keep going. Along with open-ended questions, we compare perceptions and experiences of gender bias for 1,606 women leaders in these fields across 15 factors ranging from subtle, such as lack of acknowledgement, to overt, such as workplace harassment. Even though women are the majority in these industries, we found they still experience a multitude of biases, because of course they do. One example is constrained communication, in which women have to be mindful when expressing authority and downplaying their accomplishments. The reported lack of acknowledgement for their contributions and being interrupted by men when speaking. And even when women were well represented, the workplace often still had a boys' club mentality where the decisions were made mostly by men. The participants were at times on a glass cliff. All these terms I've never heard. What is a glass cliff? I'm sure they're going to tell us. Being held responsible for problems outside of their control. That's what a glass cliff is. They often lack mentors and sponsors. Well, we already know why that is, guys. Remember the whole M2 thing and how most managers are afraid to mentor women now? You made your bed, ladies. And lastly, some women found no other choice but to limit their aspirations due to personal obligations. In other words, their workplace was not supportive of combining work with family. Beyond these barriers, our results showed notable differences in other aspects of gender bias between the industries. So this last one, guys, a business has to be competitive. And if a woman has a child, the child comes first. And you can't expect every single business to just bend to the fact that you made the decision to have a child, ladies. It's just not happening. Private business, all these, healthcare, law, all these, you have to remain competitive. So, if you have a kid and you expect them to kind of bend to you because you had one, you probably have another thing coming. Anyway, law was the most challenging environment in our study. Women report the highest level of exclusion and workplace harassment in comparison to the other three studies. There's a long history of bias against women in law. The field's competitive nature and emphasis on billable hours can make it difficult for individuals with caretaking responsibilities, disproportionately women, to keep up, thus perpetuating inequalities. And this is exactly what I was talking about. Guys, you know that businesses are putting IVF and freezing eggs in women's, law firms are putting IVF and freezing eggs in women's coverage in women's insurance plans so they can try and get that woman who just made partner to have kids later, because a lot of these hotshot lawyers, men and women, because of the field is billable hours, they're working 80, 90, 100 billable hours a week. And when a woman has that kid, the average woman in the United States works like 37, 38 hours compared to a man's 42 hours or something like that. That 80, 90 hours is going to go down to like 40 hours because they have to be there for the kid, or they're going to call in sick if their kid gets sick and all that stuff. And these law firms like, we want that money. Anyway, by contrast, women in higher education comparatively had the least challenging environment. These women reported facing constrained communication, unequal standards, salary inequality, and even workplace harassment. Yet they experienced more egalitarian organizational norms, were more willing to pursue promotions and other opportunities, had more sponsorship, and received more recognition for contribution compared to the other three industries. Higher education has a communal nature, social justice orientation. I keep telling you guys, universities now, a lot of them are just indoctrination camps for women to not need men, and this is why. Social justice orientation, a commitment to shared governance and inclusivity, especially in decision making. Collective ownership and stakeholder input may lead to an environment that is completely better for women. But they still said that they experience all this stuff up here. Constrained communication, unequal standards, salary inequality, blah, blah, blah. Female leaders in the faith-based nonprofit industry reported the lowest levels of queen bee syndrome. As queen bee syndrome is where a woman gets in power and then she starts flexing all over the women in the office and makes it difficult for other women because she paid her dues, so the other women have to pay their dues too, and she gets really catty and all that stuff. So that's what queen bee syndrome is. So anyway, reported the lowest level of queen bee syndrome, workplace harassment, and salary inequality in comparison to the other three samples. Of course, there are some possible explanations for these results. First, the small number of female leaders in faith-based nonprofits may mute queen bee behaviors. Second, the faith-based nature of these organizations may have socialized members to be kinder and women to accept their lower status, which could limit harassment. Last, reports of salary inequality may have been subdued by the industry's generally low salary expectations and an unusual salary structure, in which couples are sometimes hired as a unit. I don't know if I've said this on this channel, but I'll say it right now. Guys, stay away from the nonprofit sector. They work you too hard. You don't make enough money. Like, there's the thing that draws a lot of women to the nonprofit sector is that romanticized view that they're going to save the universe. Too many women think that they're going to save the world. They're going to save the sick children. They're going to save the animals. They're going to save the environment. So they go towards nonprofits and they give all their best years to a nonprofit, and they wake up when they're 45 making barely any money alone. So stay away from the nonprofit sector, guys, and stay away from women in the nonprofit sector, because they're going to want you to help them in their dream of saving the world. It's just a bad deal all the way around. Our survey participants who worked in healthcare reported the second highest levels of unequal standard, just behind law. Research in healthcare and other industries has found that supposedly a meritocratic reward system has been shown to increase gender inequalities in performance evaluations, work allocations, and rewards, particularly in specialized job roles. Additionally, social expectations for women to be nurturing place pressure on women physicians to spend more time with patients and provide more emotional support than is expected of male counterparts. I like to see mid-levels. I like to see nurse practitioners and physician assistants, and they've been mostly women. And I do know that I can say that Whenever I have to see a doctor, they spend less time with me, period. It doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman. But the mid levels, so the physician assistants and the nurse practitioners, are usually women, and they do spend more time with me. But I wonder if it's the nature of the position instead of uh maybe, I don't know. Anyway, let me know what you think. Do you guys have a different experience with nurse practitioners and physician assistants than you do regular doctors? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, clearly, having balanced or even greater numbers of women in an organization is not by itself changing women's experience of bias. Bias is built into the system and continues to operate more, even when more women than men are present. But the good news is that leaders can use these findings to create gender equitable practices and environments which reduce bias. So I guess they're saying replace competition with cooperation. Guys, that's never going to happen in private industry. Let's not cap, especially when the goal is to make money, but let's go with it. 8 studies with 147,000 people show that dominant competitive leadership has the unintended consequence of zero-sum thinking, the belief that progress can be made only at the expense of others, among subordinates. Such environments disincentivize workers from helping and supporting their colleagues, but that's private industry. Always has been, always will be. Top leaders should model cooperation, incentivize collaboration, and teamwork. For example, pharmaceutical company Pfizer had rapid execution a success with its cough treatment through I can't say that on YouTube because they'll flag the video, through a cooperative environment in which everybody was pulling in the same direction with the same goal. They asserted that the experience was like magic. Measure success by goals, not by time spent. Too often, presenteeism functions as a measure of employee performance and dedication. As distributed workforces and remote work have taken hold, measuring performance by time in the office or spent online is not relevant, but giving people freedom and responsibility to choose when they can make managers anxious. One way to address this is to specify more and micromanage less. Specify the goals and how success is measured, but then allow employees to creatively and freely pursue their objectives. Implement equitable reward structures. While meritocratic reward systems like pay for performance and billable hours may seem equitable, they paradoxically increase gender inequality. That's because men work more hours and call in sick less. And you're saying that yeah, I'm gonna keep going because I'll go off. One study found that managers in explicit meritocracies were less likely to award pay fairly and more apt to act on biases, such as by giving women smaller bonuses, because women in general call in sick more, work less, want to work on stuff like diversity, inclusion initiatives, all the stuff that doesn't really help the business's bottom line. It's better to implement cooperative reward structures which recognize all types of contributions toward organizational goals. One way to do that is to measure business units not only in their own performance, but also that of peer units, thus encouraging employees to actively help their colleagues. Provide remote and flexible work with autonomy. While many companies implemented remote work before 2020, the pandemic has proven the success of remote and flexible work in many more industries. Not only have employees' morale and work-life balance improved with less time on the road and more time for personal pursuits and family obligations, but even resistant to change industries like banking and finance continue to thrive with a remote workforce. And that's true, guys. I work from home. It's great. It's great. I love it. Uh, that's pretty much all the same thing. Increase transparency and decision making. When people feel included, they will speak up and go the extra mile, which boosts organizational performance. Transparent decision making has been linked to increased employee trust, happiness, and engagement, and fosters innovative thinking. Like higher education's shared governance model, full discussion and decision should occur when the stakeholders are present. It says, it ends with gender equity isn't just about representation. We need to terminate gender bias at its root by fixing our organizations to make them inclusive, flexible, supportive, and equitable to women. So, guys created the successful formula of how businesses work, and that is why it's inherently biased towards women. That's pretty much what this article is saying. What do you think about this? This is just another example of everything's men's fault, and it's said that these 3 ladies had to do a study on this, especially with their what's this thing called, a gender bias and leader, a gender bias scale for women leaders. I wonder which one of these when these three came up with that. Let me know what you think about this. Like, subscribe, and I will catch you on the next one.